everyone. So today, instead of reading you a storybook you already know and love, we're going to do something a little bit different. I am going to read you a story that I wrote for my daughter when she was maybe 3 years old. She was pretty little. It was a long time ago, but it was a really cute story, and I think a lot of little girls will really enjoy it, and hopefully some boys too. So without further ado, this is called The Fairest, and I don't have any pictures, so you're going to have to use your imaginations. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful young princess named Evelyn. She had rosy cheeks, thick, glossy raven hair, and wide brown eyes. The people all agreed that the princess was the fairest maiden in the land. But Evelyn was more than just beautiful. She was also kind. She had a wonderful, loving heart. She smiled at everyone she met. She went out of her way to help those who were in need. The princess was never mean, impatient, or rude to others. She loved to make people happy and see them smile. Princess Evelyn was very sweet, very kind, and very beautiful. Everyone in the kingdom loved her. Everyone, that is, except the witch. The witch lived in a swamp not far from the palace, with her pet slug, Booger. She was a mean, ugly old bat. She kicked puppies for fun. She never missed a chance to spit in someone's soup, and she spent her free time throwing rocks at passing people and animals. She hated all things beautiful and good, especially the princess, who was beautiful and good all the time. "Ooh, that princess makes me so mad," the witch told Booger one day. "I bet if she wasn't so beautiful, she wouldn't be so good either. If she was ugly like me, she'd probably be mean and miserable too. It's easy to be nice and beautiful and kind when everything in your life and your world is wonderful. It's when things are really nasty and uncomfortable that your true self comes out, just like me. If she was ugly like me, she would probably be miserable." This gave the witch an idea. "That's it!" she shrieked at Booger. "I'll cast a spell that will make her as ugly as I am. Then we'll see how good and kind she really is." Cackling madly, the witch got to work. "Ooh, this is gonna be fun," she grinned. The next morning, Princess Evelyn woke to the sound of birds singing outside her window. She climbed out of her bed and went to the window to greet the birds. "Good morning, friends." The birds froze, staring at the princess. "What's wrong, little friends?" Evelyn asked. As one, the birds screeched in terror and took to the air, flying away as quickly as their tiny wings could carry them. "Oh dear," the princess said. "I hope they're all right. I wonder what frightened them." Princess Evelyn walked over to her mirror to comb her hair. When she looked in the mirror, however, she was shocked to see a hideous face staring back at her. She screamed in terror. The face in the mirror screamed right back at her. Evelyn whirled around, checking the room behind her. No monster. Timidly, she looked into the mirror. The face was peering back at her. Evelyn gasped. The creature in the mirror was wearing her pajamas. The princess slowly raised one hand. The monster did the same. She jumped up and down. The image in the mirror copied her. Evelyn lifted her hands to her face, watching as her motions were mirrored again. Her face felt hairy. Her skin was rough and scratchy. Her cheeks drooped down from her face like a bulldog. Her beautiful hair was gone, with only the occasional wispy patch remaining. Most of her teeth had disappeared as well, and those that remained were crooked. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. What had happened to her? She hid her face in her hands, sobbing loudly. The monster in the mirror sobbed too. The monster in the mirror was her. The queen heard her daughter crying and came to see what the problem was. When she opened the door, the princess screamed and hid in the closet. "My love," the queen asked, "what's wrong?" The princess just cried more loudly. "Why don't you come out here so we can talk?" "No!" Evelyn shouted. "I can't! Nobody can see me like this!" The queen was bewildered. "Like what, darling?" The princess sniffed. "Mama, I'm ugly." Laughing, the queen said, "You could never be ugly, sweetheart. You're the most beautiful and sweet and wonderful girl in the land." "Not anymore." Princess Evelyn slowly walked out of the closet, facing her mother. The queen gasped, "Oh no, my darling, what happened to you? Evelyn's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know, Mama. I woke up like this. The Queen began to cry as well. Oh, my poor baby. We'll find a way to fix this. Hesitantly, the Queen moved over to the princess, put her arms around her, and hugged her tightly. Remember, the Queen told Evelyn, no matter what happens on the outside, you are still the same beautiful person on the inside. Nothing can change that. Evelyn hid in the palace for weeks, refusing to let anyone but her mother see her. Finally, though, she realized this spell wasn't going away anytime soon, and she couldn't hide forever. She was the princess, and her people needed her. So she got dressed, wrapped a scarf around her head to hide her hideous face, and went out. The princess walked to old Mother Sally's house, a basket of food on her arm. The elderly woman had been ill for several months. Princess Evelyn often brought her food and company to lift Sally's spirits and to help her get well. When old Mother Sally saw the princess, however, she was frightened. Who are you? She asked. What do you want? It's me, Evelyn, the princess answered softly. I know I look different, but I'm still the same person I've always been, and I'd like to visit if you'll let me. I'd rather you didn't, old Mother Sally responded. Please, just go away. Princess Evelyn bit her lip, trying not to cry. Very well, she answered. I'll just leave this basket of food on the table for you. She set down the basket and hurried out the door. Evelyn was feeling hurt, but she decided that she would try again somewhere else. She often volunteered at the royal soup kitchen, handing out food to the poor and down on their luck. I'll go there, she decided. They need the help. Surely they won't turn me away just because I'm ugly. At the soup kitchen, however, the other volunteers stayed far away from the princess. They did need the help, but they were all too scared to stand next to her. Princess Evelyn tried to ignore the loneliness and isolation she was feeling and focus instead on handing out food. But the poor people were afraid of her too. No one wanted the food she was offering. Finally, the old man in charge of the soup kitchen came over and asked her to leave. I know you're just trying to help, but you're scaring people away, he said. The princess left, once again feeling sad and rejected. How can I help my people if they're afraid of me, she wondered. Suddenly, the princess heard a yell for help. It was a child, terrified and crying somewhere nearby. I hear you, she called, breaking into a run. She chased the sound through the streets, around corners, up and down stairs until she found the source of the noise. A little boy had fallen into the river that flowed through the city. He was clinging to the rock as the water swirled around him, trying to sweep him away. His hands were shaking, cold and numb, and he was about to lose his grip. He spotted the princess. Help me, he cried. I can't hold on. I'm coming, the princess promised. Quickly, she pulled off her shoes and jacket. Then she remembered the scarf tied around her head. She didn't want anyone to see the extent of her hideousness, but the scarf might get tangled in the water and choke her. She realized that the boy's life was more important than her own insecurities, and this was no time for vanity. She ripped the scarf off of her head and dove into the water. Princess Evelyn swam quickly over to the rock and pulled the boy into her arms. I've got you, she promised, and launched herself toward the shore. Thanks to many years of swimming lessons, Evelyn had no trouble fighting the current and pulling the boy to safety. As she staggered out of the water with the little boy in her arms, Evelyn saw that a crowd had gathered on the shore. They stood facing her, staring, frozen at the sight of her monstrous face. She hunted for her scarf, trying to cover herself up, but it was useless. They'd already seen. What are they staring at? The boy whispered. The princess looked at him, bewildered. What do you mean? Look at me. I'm a monster. It's no wonder they're frightened. Wide-eyed, the little boy gazed up at the princess. You're not a monster. You saved me. You're the most beautiful person in the world right now. A cry came from the back of the group of bystanders. Matthew! A woman shrieked, pushing her way through the crowd. Matthew! The little boy turned toward the sound. Mama! The woman ran up to the princess, who still held Matthew in her arms. She reached for her son, and Evelyn handed him over, shyly backing away. Matthew hugged his mother fiercely. I'm okay, Mama, I'm okay. She saved me. For the first time, Matthew's mother noticed the princess. She gasped in shock when she saw Evelyn's appearance, but recovered quickly, changing her shock for a smile. I don't know who you are, but I'm forever in your debt. You saved my little boy. I can never thank you enough. Evelyn smiled hesitantly. It's okay, really. Anyone would have done the same. I just got there first. Oh, and I'm so glad you did. Matthew's mother smiled. She looked down at the little boy in her arms. Maybe now he'll learn not to play near the river. Matthew looked sheepish. Yes, Mama. The princess turned away, not wanting to interrupt their tearful reunion. She picked up her jacket and shoes, wrapped the scarf around her head, and began to walk away. Wait, Matthew called. You saved me, but I don't even know your name. The crowd turned as well, curious to hear the answer. Evelyn blushed, embarrassed by all the people looking at her. She answered, my name is Evelyn. Matthew laughed. Like the princess? The princess flushed more deeply. Exactly like that, yes. Matthew's mother was staring at Evelyn. Wait, she said. You are the princess, aren't you? Someone in the crowd laughed, but was quickly hushed. Everyone was staring at her. Yes, Evelyn stammered. I am. Desperate, she tried to explain. I woke up like this a few weeks ago. I don't know what happened. Something changed me, and now I'm a monster now. She hung her head, ashamed. Matthew's mother walked up to the princess and put a hand on her rough, hairy cheek. You are not a monster, she insisted. You saved my son's life. Only a truly beautiful person puts others before themselves. The mother turned to the crowd. Beauty is something that comes from inside a person. The princess may have changed on the outside, but she is still the same selfless, kind, beautiful princess she has always been. She proved that today. She is still the fairest in the land. The crowd cheered. The princess, overwhelmed by the love of her people, put her hands to her face and began to cry tears of joy. As she cried, she felt something strange. Her face felt smoother beneath her hands, not so hairy. Her mouth felt full of straight, even teeth again, and she could feel the weight of thick hair on her shoulders. Stunned, the princess lowered her hands, staring into the faces of the people around her. Her shock was reflected on every face she looked into. The hideous creature that had stood before them was gone. Princess Evelyn's outer beauty had been restored. I'm beautiful again, she whispered. I'm beautiful again. Matthew took Princess Evelyn's hand and smiled up at her. Silly, he said. You always were. The end.